Good morning, everybody. It's time for another delicious edition of Texas Oatmeal. It's actually nighttime. It's been a long day. I've been doing a lot of work on RC car bodies because I got hit this week with like a ton of them. So anyways, I painted a whole bunch. It was for a lot of repeat customers, a couple new customers, but I painted a whole bunch this week. And I remembered as I was cutting them all out that I was going to do a video about how to cut out an RC car body. At least the way I do it, and maybe a couple tips or tricks that maybe you guys haven't done or haven't seen, or maybe you're new to the hobby, you don't know about cutting out bodies, or you're scared to cut them out, or you have no idea what to use, or whatever. I'm gonna go through that real quick. It's actually really simple. I've got one here that I didn't cut out yet because duh, I'm gonna show you how to do it. I have a whole bunch I've been working on. I'm gonna show you that, that I was actually cutting out just a few minutes ago, and then I realized, ooh, I should probably film this and show how to cut this one out. So anyways, let's get into it. All you really need, for the most part, is RC car scissors. These are body scissors. They're curved. You can see they have a little bit of a curve to them. Not a lot, just a little bit. It helps when you're cutting your radiuses and stuff. You're going to need that. You're going to need an X-Acto knife, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Some people cut the whole thing out with an X-Acto knife. I don't do that because it's a little dangerous, but it is definitely helpful in certain areas, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And then a reamer. This is a body reamer. These are designed to cut holes into things. So like this hole that's going to go right here, you're going to ream that with this. This is literally called a body reamer. They are very useful. I don't know how you would do this very successfully without it. I mean, people use a drill, but that, well, that's dumb. This is the tool to use. These aren't really expensive. I think this one's like 20 bucks or something. It's the ProTech RC one. Shout out Mark Santa Maria. I'm sure he would love that I'm promoting ProTech. It happens to just be the best value, actually. Anyways, and then for a few things, you're going to want a Dremel with a sanding bit. This is not the one I normally use. I broke the one that I normally use, so this is the one I'm using currently, but it cuts into this Lexan really, really easily. So you're going to want that to get into some tricky areas or to clean up some edges or something. You're going to want that. Some people use sandpaper to smooth out some edges and things. I don't really ever find a need for that. The Dremel does the areas that I need to get into. The scissors cut a pretty clean line without it being real jagged, and the Reamer is amazing because it's awesome. Anyways, so I'm going to cut this one out real quick and show you a couple little tricky spots along the way. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the body scissors and cut the big chunks of the body out of the way so that I can come back and fine cut the rest. This is where some people that use the X-Acto might skip this step because they can just go ahead and follow the line with the X-Acto knife and score it and then break it off, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a little dangerous to be trying to cut all this real smooth and precise and not slip and stab yourself. I know because I've done it. So I'm going to take the body scissors and just cut off these big areas. You can see like this big chunk right here. Like here's the body line that I'm going to follow. Yeah, that shows up in video. And I'm going to cut this chunk off that's not necessarily, just kind of quickly, not real precise, just to get it out of the way. It'll help when I'm trying to make these fine cuts for these big areas not to be in the way, especially when you get into areas that have these, it's real tight right here. There's a lot of body corners that are right here, and it's hard to get the scissors to work through this without cutting the big chunks off first and getting it out of the way. Okay, so big chunks are cut out of the way. It just makes it easier because you're not messing with the extra, the flange or the edge here that's at a different angle stiffens this body. It's part of the mold that they pulled when they vacuum formed this. But get that out of the way so that you can flex the body as you cut it. I'll show you here as you're cutting the body itself along the edge. The scissors are going to force this away from the body, so that's great and all. But at some point you kind of pull on this a little bit. I'll show you here as I get further into the corner. So, and you get into the corner here, you want to pull this away, which will allow the scissors to kind of rotate through the corner a little easier, right, as you cut this. So this isn't trying to lay back down into where you just cut it, and you just keep going. Now, when you get to these corners here, it tends to be real hard to cut through here because you're not cutting on like the same plane, right? You change the angle here. So I actually come back the other direction and cut this way with it, so that I'm not, forcing the scissors, through a harder, corner there. This is easier to cut back to it if you find it, if you're coming along and you find that it's real hard to make this corner because you can't get the scissors to literally move that way. I mean, you can just tell they're fighting it. They're trying to pull up through there, and you just come back and cut it this way. Super easy. You can go ahead and radius these corners as you're going. I mean, I'll do that sometimes. Sometimes I'm just trying to do everything quicker, and I just cut it straight at the corner, and then I come back and radius it later. It's really just up to you, however you want to do it. No big deal. Like here, I'm just going to cut it straight because it's easier, and then I'll come back and radius that corner later. So you're just following the line as best you can. Here, it goes up a little bit. The scissors really do a pretty good job of doing that without needing to come back and Dremel it later, even though it is kind of helpful to Dremel it sometimes at the very end and just clean up all these little hard to cut corners. So as I come here, again, you could radius this and keep going, but I find it's easier just to go ahead and cut straight across and come back and do it later sometimes. So here I'm going to do that. And again, as I cut through this, I'm just following this line as best I can. It's pretty easy to cut a straight line with curved scissors. You'll notice I'm not cutting this, I'm not closing the scissors all the way every time. I actually stop right before the end of the scissors close. I stop and open up again. That helps cut a cleaner line, so that you don't have a bunch of sharp little edges when you cut into it. When you're cutting in and you stop every time, it makes a jagged little edge right there where you've stopped, and it's just rough. It's not that bad, but I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's better to not come to a close every single time you cut through it, right? And here's where it gets pretty tricky. As you're coming to these real small areas, I'll actually cut on this side of the line a bit away from the body that I'm going to leave, that I'm actually cutting this away from the body, so that I can come back and hit this with a Dremel and it be cleaner, because these little tiny areas, it gets real hard to make that corner with the scissors. They just won't cut that small of a radius. So I kind of cut to this side of the body, and then I come back and clean that up with the Dremel in these real tight corners. All right, so all those corners are good and round, and yeah, that's good to go. So at this point, you get out your reamer, and you cut the holes for the body mounts. You just eye it, just get it pretty close to the middle, push down through it a little bit. You don't have to get super aggressive with it. You just want to poke through there to get it started, and then just apply a little bit of pressure and twist at the same time as you get to the dimension that you want. Now the ProTech has markings on it to go to like 1/4 and 1/2 inch dimensions. So as you get to that point in the cut, you actually know what size you're to. I don't really look at it too much. I just cut it till the line goes away on the body. Maybe even just a tiny bit bigger than the line, just to give you a little wiggle room. Yeah, so you can see that this one's made to be slotted. These Techno bodies are all slotted basically. So on these, I cut a hole in it, and that's where I use the Dremel. From the hole, from the inside, I'll come out with the Dremel to give it a nice slotted look. You can cut multiple holes in this so that you have less to Dremel. I actually do that because it makes it a little easier when you go to clean up the edges of it. If you Dremel all of it out, there's a lot of material left over along the edges that are just, I don't know, it's kind of a pain to cut off later. So I go ahead and just make like 3 holes in this, just so I've got less to Dremel out of there. Okay, so there's those 3 holes. I'll come back with the Dremel and slot through all that, and then clean this up as best I can. And then I'll clean these edges up in here where it was real tight and I couldn't get real close to it. And then this is pretty much done. Okay, so the problem with the Dremel is it makes a huge mess, of course. Now you've got to wipe all this off of here. It goes everywhere. It's all over you. It's all over the body. It's not ideal, but it is the best way to slot that and clean up all these little corners. I just don't know that there's a better way to do it. Okay, so I've got a little 10 scale buggy wing, and these are real complicated in the way that they are shaped. So this dips down in here and then comes up, and then it's supposed to cut all the way across this straight edge. This edge right here, actually. So it's hard to get the scissors in here because this dips in, and then as you're cutting across, it's a really straight line, of course. It's hard to get these scissors in here at this angle from either way because you're above it here, or you can't come through in the middle down from this side. So it's just really an odd angle to get the scissors in there. So that's where I use the X-Acto knife. Go ahead and cut with the scissors into here to get it, down and started, so that then I can just take my X-Acto knife and score this all the way across here, right? So the X-Acto knife will follow the line in the body, the mold line in the body, or in this wing in this case, pretty well. You don't have to get really crazy with it, but you want to give it pretty decent pressure. And just be real careful, of course, not to let it slip and stab into you. That's not fun for anyone. But basically, you just take your very steady hand and score the body to one end. And this will actually snap at that score line. If you don't do it really hard, if you just kind of score it lightly, it takes more pressure to get it to snap. But once you do, it will peel away really, really clean the whole way across. And it makes a perfect line. So again, some people will take an X-Acto knife and score the whole body and then just peel it away. Again, I just think it's a little, I don't know, it's a little dangerous. It's pretty easy to be coming along and slip, and then you've scratched the body where you didn't want it to be, or worse, you scratched or you slipped and stabbed right into your finger. So I just use it on certain things like this where where it's just hard to get the scissors in there, and score it, peel it, break it, done. But the other thing it's good for is on a nitro body, you've got these lines in here. This is really hard to see, but there's a line in here that you need to cut out for a hole to fill the fuel tank on a nitro car. There's a hole here for the fuel tank, and there's a hole in the back for where the engine pokes through. I use the X-Acto knife to cut those almost exclusively. So I'll very carefully score this all the way around and follow that line as well around both of these areas, and then I'll use the Reamer to start a hole to get the scissors into, to cut off to one side and then peel it out. I'll show you that here now. This is where it's real tricky when you're using an X-Acto knife. When you get to the corner of a body and you need to transition to this downward edge, This is where it wants to slip because you're changing kind of where you're putting pressure, and it will slip on you. So that's where you need to be very, very careful. And again, it's hard to explain how much pressure to use. You have to just kind of try it and see what works. I put a pretty good amount of pressure when I'm cutting this because I want to score this area so that it will come out and break away from the body. All right, so those areas are scored, and then I grab the reamer. And I grab this reamer and I put a hole somewhere in it. I usually go kind of in the middle so that I can get the body scissors in there and cut off to one side, and it allows me then to grab it and break it and peel it out of there. So it's hard to say where to do it, just kind of whatever, just wherever you want to do it. It doesn't have to be exactly in the middle, but just somewhere where you can get the reamer going. And this, you know, I just cut a real big hole to get started so I can put the scissors in there and go to town. All right, so there's a hole. Take the scissors, cut to all the way up just to the line that you scored. You don't want to cut past it, of course, but just to the line as close as you can, and that will allow you to get your thumb in here or your finger in here and start to pull it and peel it away. Now, it's a little intimidating because you know, you're hoping that you don't pull it and it cut one of these lines that you've done for the design, but for the most part it will cut this harder scored line than it will anything else. So see, I got the scissors in there because it was having a hard time kind of getting started. Once you get on that scored edge, it shouldn't take a lot of pressure to get it going, to get it coming around there. But getting it to start that edge sometimes can be tricky. So anyways, so peeling this out of here. When you get to these top edges, of course, it usually likes to mess up pretty good. And you see it actually started to just tear the body instead of following the score line. That can be tricky. Again, I'll just grab the scissors then and go in here and go ahead and just cut that where it's really, really thick material, just so I'm not forcing anything, and then I can continue peeling. Same thing here as it started to get off. I don't want to chance it, so I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, get the scissors in there where I can and go ahead and cut it, just because it's real thick on the top of some of these 8-scale bodies and it just doesn't want to cooperate. So if you can get your scissors in there to cut some of it, go for it. You know, the scissors are definitely the safest way to cut all this out. So anyways, so there's that. You can see there's a little flap here where it didn't pull the paint, but nice clean hole. You know, if it's not perfect, you can hit it with the Dremel a little bit to clean it up. I'll do the same thing on the back. So that's it. This one's all cut out, ready to go, ready to be thrown on the car and probably destroyed, because the person that this is for, he wrecks a lot. So he's gonna need some new bodies, which, hey, repeat business is good for me. So that's it. You can see it's all cut out, ready to go. I'll throw this in the bag, send it off to the customer. I cut out all my bodies at the end when I'm done. I just do that as a free service because it only takes maybe 10 minutes or something to do it, but I'm pretty fast at it. Maybe a little bit longer on a nitro body that I have to cut out the holes, but cutting the main parts off takes, you know, minutes. So I just do that for you know, customers, just as an added little bonus, because nobody really likes cutting out bodies. It's definitely not fun, but it's not super tricky, and but it can be definitely intimidating. I mean, a lot of people don't want to even attempt it because they take their perfect body that they just got painted, and you could ruin it if you don't know what you're doing. So that's gonna be it for today. We'll see you next time. Peace. Hey, J Concepts and Proline. It's 2021. It's about time that you offer pre-cut bodies for everyone. That would save me all this work, and customers wouldn't have to cut their own out. So not only do you need pre-cut decals, but pre-cut bodies. Come on.